It's a great privilege to have him. We thank him so much for being here, and everyone enjoy.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you very much. It's a lot to live up to there, Rabbi. It really is. Baruch Hashem. They say it's so packed in here all the time. They said only a few guys showed up this afternoon. So, make sure you send the rest of the guys an email afterwards and tell them, they missed out on something great. It's a big spot to be here with all of you. Baruch Hashem. You should know, just as famous as Nissim Black is OJ. You guys are just next level. We've been talking about orange juice for many years already over here, big OJ. But you're outside of Jerusalem. I would say we've made to make some changes to the name, but it's okay. Baruch Hashem. Still, the Or Yerushalayim is shining all the way over here to Beit Meir. That says the Or of Yerushalayim is already over here. Extension, Baruch Hashem. It's a big schus to be with all of you. Shoot to all the Rabbanim, Baruch Hashem, everybody, Rav Yoni, Vash, I don't know what you guys call him over here. You have a different handle?
He's called me the man.
The man. Got it. Baruch Hashem. So, to be very honest, I'm a free-flowing individual. More than anything else, what I'm always looking for is the opportunity to be a tzino Hashem. And whatever I feel that Hashem is pushing us in whatever direction is where we'll go. So I don't think we'll be all over the place. It's usually a kivun. And especially right now, and when we're living in our times, there are certain inyanim that we have to deal with and grapple with that they didn't have to deal with in earlier generations. The Navi says in Amos, he says that a time is going to come when there's going to be a famine in the land. There's going to be hunger. But he said it's not going to be a hunger for food or a thirst for drink, but rather it's going to be a hunger for Devar Hashem. That, in other words, there's going to be such a time that there's a chisaron of Hashem's word being heard in the world, unlike any other times. But the real question is that how can the Navi say that this is going to be a future event? We are already told in the Sefer Shmuel that before Shmuel HaNavi received his call to Nevuah, that to hear the word of Hashem, to hear the word of Hashem in that time was a very scarce matter, meaning that it wasn't heard very often. In other words, Shmuel's sitting there inside of the Mishkan in Shiloh, and he's at some distance away from Eli, who was the Kohen at the time, and he hears Shmuel. He wakes up. This happens 3 times, and he's running over to Eli, thinking that Eli's calling him. And Eli on the 3rd time says to him, he says, you know what? I think you're hearing from Hashem. He says, go back and say Hineni. Say, here I am. And then after that, immediately then, at that point, the Shmuel HaNavi becomes not only the Navi in Israel, but he was also the Shofet of his time. He was the last Shofet before we had the Malchus of Shaul HaMelech. So if we already know that this has happened, and even if you look in the Sefer Shoftim also, there's many times where this absence, so to speak, this Hester Panim of Hashem would appear in many different times before the appointing of a new judge. And so before that would happen, there was always this time of Hashem waxing and waning, so to speak, Hashem's Ashkacha, the Devar Hashem, whether there was a Navi, no Navi, we heard Hashem. So what is Hashem talking about? So the real answer shows up in Hosea, because Hosea tells us that it is going to be a very long period of time. That Klal Yisrael will dwell without a king, we will dwell without a korban, there will be no korban, and there will be a time of distance between us and Hashem before the ultimate redemption happens and when it takes place. The problem we have now is that there's an Or Gadol, a light that is shining into the world, especially as we're just now finishing up the Shovavim. We talked about Rav Matul. Rav Matul talked about the Shovavim, explained it as a time, the Zaman of Or Mashiach, the time of Geula, because we're very, very close to the coming of Mashiach, and all the writing is on the wall. If any person pays attention to what's going on inside the Gemara, and the second Sanhedrin, and also Sota, and we look at what the Nevi'im are saying, we see very, very clearly that there's so many different things happening, that all the puzzle pieces are happening there. But the question is, if there's such an awe during this time, as we're coming closer to Mashiach, obviously when Hashem is radiating this great light, how come it's harder to feel it? It almost seems that contrary to what we're expecting, this Gula, this Gula Shlema that we're expecting, this time of redemption when Mashiach will come, is a bit major problem. There's such a chisar and a hergish and feeling that Hashem is actually here with us. in a major way. A person has to train themselves to some degree to be very, very spiritually sensitive, to be able to recognize things that are happening on the day-to-day, to see Yad Hashem on the day-to-day. It's a very, very hard thing for a person to do unless they're tapped in and connected. But even with that, when a person's tapped in and connected, I'm not hearing stories like I heard during the time of the Baal Shem Tov. I'm not hearing stories like I heard in the time of all the former tzaddikim and the people, the Grat. I'm not hearing the same stories. What's happening? How could it be that Hashem's light is shining now? How are we more zocher? Because we're closer to this Zman Geula, we're closer to Mashiach coming than the last generations. And there's an or, Rav Matul says, that's coming down now. Oh, where's the or? Hashem, show me the light. It is shining very nice outside, but it's still cold. Hashem, okay, it's shining, but it's cold. Very interesting thing. So I had a thought that there's something interesting that Rabbi Nachman of Breslov says. He says that the greatest kavod to Hashem happens and takes place the more distant the neshama is away from him, when that person has a hisaurus, when that person wakes up and is inspired to make tshuva. He says, "Hear hurei tshuva." All that person has at that point are thoughts of tshuva. They didn't make any actions yet or anything like that. The biggest kavod to Hashem at that point is when this person has hear hurei tshuva, when there's a thought or a whim of tshuva amongst that person, then this gives Hashem the biggest kavod. And even more so when the person actually returns to Hashem. So what happens? At the time where a person has a hero tshuva, a person that finds himself in the lowest, darkest depths of the place, something interesting happens. I want to sidebar that real quick. I'll come back to it. Itamar Schwartz, the Bilvavi, he says that in this time, it's much easier for us to access higher levels of Kirvas Hashem and to enter into higher madregas, higher levels, in this generation than the former generations, and it's much easier than it was in the previous generations, which also doesn't make sense. Because I just said, I'm not hearing the same stories as I heard before. So I was trying to pair and put a couple things together, but I thought about what he said, and I'm thinking about what Reb Nachman says, and I'm thinking about this board. So it's a very interesting thing. If I want to reach somebody that's this distance, I could speak this, in a lower voice. If I want to reach somebody that's a little bit further, I have to speak in a louder voice. If a person's even further away, then I have to scream, I have to yell. And at some point, there's a distance where no matter how much noise that I make, the person won't hear me. So Hashem, in His infinite light and His infinite mercy, shines a light. We've seen Moshe Rabbeinu. We're going to see it pretty soon in the next few parashiyot, that when he comes down, and we see that his face is glowing, is illuminating, so much so that he has to veil his face because the light that he just had on his face was so great that it's lasting. It didn't go away so easily. So what happens is Hashem, in order for him to reach a generation like this that's so far away, coupled to what Reb Nachman just said, the amount of light, the wattage of light that Hashem has to send in this generation is much higher than he would in previous generations because of the distance. We're not talking about a distance of time. We're talking about a distance of proximity of a person's hitnagut, the way he behaves and the way that they are, the bombardment of what we all have in his generation. We're being bombarded. I said to a friend of mine, I said, do you know what type of shlemazo guy would have to be to waste time 200 years ago? Like, what were you doing? Today, he didn't have Facebook, he didn't have Instagram, he didn't have Twitter, he didn't have nothing. He didn't have a smartphone. How could you waste time 200, 300 years ago? What were you doing? What have you been doing with your time? So how could a person see? But the bombardment of everything that we have today, how many things are in the way of us actually serving Hashem in this generation? It's not like any other generation. But yet, the or we're promised, the light that we're promised is to be much higher. And because of that, a person can reach even higher. So what happens is, as this light starts to make its way to the depths, to the furthest generation, the furthest generations, and the deeper a person goes, the wattage has to be so high, so that the moment that the person has a hir hori tshuva, this compared to previous generations, is like the guy went up 40 levels in 1 second. It's also brought, I think it was in the introduction to one of the Yalchud Yosefs that he brought, that a person could receive a higher madrega in his preparation for Pesach. In Pesach, if he studied all the halachas, everything that he needed to before Pesach, he'll reach even a higher madrega than what he deserves during the time of Pesach because of that. This is one of the introductions to the Yalchud Yosef. It's not talking any Hasidus said here. So there's access to Hashem in this generation, unlike there were other generations. The only question is on all of us, is whether or not we're making a kinyan. If Hashem is saying that I'm making myself available in this generation, regardless, and because you have to understand the way Hashem works is meter connected meter. As brought out, Hashem works with us meter connected meter. So the way we are with Hashem is the way that He is with us. So if it is, and in fact, a reality for us that Hashem is shining more in this world and Hashem is making Himself accessible, and Hashem is bombarding us at the same time, allowing for us to be bombarded by all of the nonsense and all the shtusim and every distraction that there is, in order for us to attain and to reach that light and reach that kesher that we should have with Hashem. If all these things are happening at the same time, then wouldn't we believe that Hashem in the same way is there's some type of cheat sheet, there's some easy button, there's something that we should be able to do to be able to capture that relationship, that loving, that kesher, that real light, to be able to capture, have access to this ore. There should be something that we could be able to do to be able to capture it. Because in other words, it wouldn't be fair, all right? It wouldn't be fair if Hashem will put us in this generation and we have to fight unlike anybody else's fight, but we have less resources. So it's got to be that there's more resources. And I'm not talking about Safaria and all the other stuff. We also have those resources also. But there's got to be some type of resources. You can look in today's generation, and we can see that there's more Torah learning than any other generation, more, yeshivot and batei midrashot. There's so many different things in this generation where a person could go and learn. They could go and sit and learn or whatever, and that's really the... But we're not producing Gedolim at the same speed we were many generations ago. So we have a big question. Where is Hashem? Hashem, what are you doing? What are you doing to me? What are you doing to us? So, if we were to learn from Moshe Rabbeinu, the one thing that Moshe Rabbeinu did was that Moshe Rabbeinu, if you sing all throughout the Torah, and you're not only going to see this by Moshe Rabbeinu, you're going to see this by Avram Avinu, you're going to see this by Yitzhak Avinu, Yaakov Avinu, is that each and every one of them made it their business to make Hashem theirs. There was a certain relationship that they had with Hashem, that it was only them and only Hashem in that moment. It says, Elokei Abraham, Elokei Yitzhak, Elokei Yaakov. I saw by Rav Avram, I think it was Avram Chazan, he wrote, Avram ben Rav Nachman, wrote that because each one of them had their own unique relationship with Hashem, it was almost as if he belonged to each one of them individually. So we say Elokei Abraham, Elokei Yitzhak, Elokei Yaakov, and we don't say Elokei Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov. So we separate it. He's the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzhak, the God of Yaakov. Because each and every one of them had their own relationship with Hashem. Each and every one of them. Moshe Rabbeinu was on a whole different level completely. Not just because he was great from the beginning. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't think of himself to be anything. He didn't think of himself to be anything. But his strength was in the fact that he made Hashem his. So one time, Rav Osh brings a lot of times that, for the 60 years that Moshe Rabbeinu was in the desert, he was just making his votages for the for 60 years. He was with Hashem, talking to Hashem for 60 years. All this built up, fire and relationship. By the time he comes out and he's ready to, Baruch Hashem, he's got enough juice and enough everything to pull out a whole entire nation out of Mitzrayim. It all came from making Hashem his. And what Hashem gives us access to do is to make Hashem ours, to make him ours. And each person has to understand this. I tell a lot of people over the years, wow, your story's crazy. Look at all what you went through, whatever. And I tell people, the truth is, for a person who was from birth, by you have it much harder. 1,000% much harder. I'm sorry to give you guys the reality, it's the truth. You have it much harder. For a person who came from where I came from, if you're in the darkness, it's much easier for you to see light. When you're surrounded by light, to know the nuances of emes and sheker in the midst of light, and you're being flooded with it all day long, it's very, very hard for a person to be able to find himself in that place. It's almost as if you're being flooded with so much good and so much light that it's hard for you to make a hevder. But for a person that's in darkness, in the moment that they see light, the light cracks in, they start walking towards it. It's not a big story. Shkoyach. Of course, I would also leave where you came from if I was you, right? But for a person who was from birth, I tell people all the time, it's much harder to come by Itchy Meir Morgenstern, Tzvi Meir. It's much harder to come by these guys. In Yeshiva the whole time. And when you're in Yeshiva the whole time, from the time you're a kid, it never, I heard by, I think it was, maybe Shir Rebbe, Rav Weinberger or something, he said, the toughest part is nothing ever was what it is, Nothing ever is what it is. You see things, and I'm dealing with my kids, I'm raising kids that are from birth, and I always say, Shem should have some Rahmanas on you guys, He didn't get to go through all the nonsense and all the shtiel that I went through to find Hashem. I had to really make a big kinyan on Hashem. So it's harder for you guys. You guys are going to have it tough, I had it easy. You guys are going to have it tough. Because it's so hard for all of us to really realize the access that we have to Hashem. We're not using our membership card. Hashem is waiting and ready to make himself available. And the nuance is that as time continues to go on, it's going to only be harder and harder to decipher what's the truth. The Gemara tells us, quoting Sefer Yeshayahu, speaking about the Zman before Mashiach, says that it's going to be so hard to tell what the emes is. It's going to be so hard to be able to distinguish between what's real and what's not real. And we're seeing this today with AI and everything else that they're bringing to the front. Deep fake, deep this fake out. It's crazy. It's awesome, the stuff that they can do. You can see it, but it's only telling on itself that, guys, we've been giving you sheker for a long time. We've been telling you stories that are not true for a very long time. And as the world continues to go, more and more things are being brought to the surface. Maybe this isn't true. Maybe the way we understood nutrition was also not true. Maybe the way was also not true. But the emes is that in order to find the truth, it's going to be very, very hard to find that truth before Mashiach comes. And that's one of the things that we know. So in order for that, in order for a person to understand during that time what the truth is and what's not the truth, the question is, what do I do? What action do I take? How am I going to be able to know? Right? If Hashem loves me, and Hashem desires me, and Hashem wants that I should have a kesher with him, Hashem wants that obviously I will be privy to the truth, what's going to be? How can I know? So, there's a very, very ancient Jewish practice, and I get in trouble sometimes when I talk to some of the yeshiva guys about this, but I was told I'd be protected here. Sorry, I just put the phone on silent. I don't know the amount of times, I can't tell you, but it happens a lot if a person looks all throughout Bereshis, and really if you look out all throughout Tanakh, but starting from Bereshis, how many times it says that Abraham stopped and he invoked the name of Hashem. Yitzhak stopped and invoked the name of Hashem. It was Lasuach Basadeh. Spoke to Hashem in the middle of the fields. There were so many different times where each one stopped and they took that chance and took that time to make Hashem theirs. Made a kinyan on the relationship with Hashem. Hashem says we're all allotted a certain amount of shares, right? I don't know, is the business buck came in here, right? You have to take up and you have to say that I want it. Hashem, yes, I want it. Hashem, I want it. And by speaking and talking, engaging in sikha to Hashem, with Hashem, this is the ultimate way of kesher and connection with Hashem. And we all understand this because any person you have a relationship with is only because you communicate with the person, right? Doesn't mean that you don't have a relationship with people that you're not communicating with, but it definitely will not be as strong as people that you are actually communicating with. I have a friend who I grew up with, or was very, very close to. I haven't talked to him in I don't know how long. And when we talk, we can pick back up, like we did many, many years ago. Not 100%, but we can pick back up many, many years ago. But obviously, I would imagine in his world, and I know for sure in my world, all things considered, I don't consider him as much. Not think about him a lot. Because he's not there. So I'm not communicating with him. But the foundation of every successful relationship is one by which there's communication. And when the communication is strong, and when the communication is often, there's much more of a kesher. I was once in Uman, and it was during Rosh Hashanah, at Mincha time, Rav Arush was given a speech inside the Klois. And he has a way of making everything very, very simple. He simplifies very, very big problems. And one of the things he said, though, I remember this year, he says, the amount of work, if you take the most simple physical work that there is, right? A person wants a job or whatever it is, he says, janitor, a person who sweeps, a person who cleans up or whatever. What makes that job hard is laziness, right? If a person has to overcome the laziness, the only thing that makes that job hard. The truth is, if you're looking at it, to sweep a floor, pick up, whatever the case is, whatever, at Yeshiva, you guys look like you could use a janitor here also. But the truth is, it takes no time, right? Pick up a broom, sweep, whatever. There's no lumdus in the job. There's nothing you really have to do in order to be able to do that. He said, but even with that physical work, right, the spiritual work that a person has to do is even more simple than that, but is even more higher, can bring a person to a higher level than most of all the spiritual vodas a person could do. As by engaging in sikha, talking to Hashem from your own words and from your own heart, daily. So by speaking to Hashem, it's even less effort than sweeping and picking up after something, but what it does for a person, it gives a person, so to speak, the highest spiritual salary that a person could get, just from talking to Hashem. Most simple thing. Rav Nachman of Breslov, if a person opens up Lekutei Moharan, I guarantee you, by reading this, he touched all of Torah Kula. In fact, Rav Nachman Chorin, I think it was Nachman Chorin, brought out, I think it was a whole sefer he brought out, just showing that the Sefer Lekutei Moharan touched all of Torah Kula. Call it Torah Kula. So Rav Nachman said on himself, he said, even on all my high hasagas, everything that I've reached, everything I was able to accomplish, he says, none of my lumdis brought me close to Hashem. He said it was only techinos, crying out to Hashem, the kushas, requesting and crying to Hashem. He says, these are the things that brought me close to Hashem. So sometimes we have to simplify the avoda because it feels sometimes when we look at our Yiddishkeit, we're stacked. We got a lot of things to do. There's a lot of obligations. There's a lot of things we have to take on. We have to account for. But the truth is that if a person really, they used to tell me this when I was a kid. I don't know if you guys ever been trained in this. I don't know what your upbringing was like, but for us, we used to know how to, learn how to fight a gang of guys. That was part of your parental training. You were raised by your kids. You had to fight a bunch of guys. When to pick up a stick, when to pick up a this. We used to have our minhag was that if I got into a one-on-one fight and I lost the fight, I also get a beating when I get home. So that is, different mahalach. So, so one of the things is very, very clear. I think this is pretty universal. If a person finds themselves ganged up by a bunch of guys, what do? You take out the biggest, strongest one first. You knock him out first. Once you knock him out, you half of the job is gone. Two of the other guys may already run, right? So you knock out the biggest thing first. I'm not endorsing any fighting. Don't say Nissim came here and, because of Nissim, we started a boxing team, say, don't, I'm just using this, in a lesson that we can all understand. You knock out the biggest thing first. So the biggest thing first is really at the roots, at the shorish of everything. That all of the problems that a person endures in his life, every single tzara that a person goes through in their life, all of the distances that a person feels between them and Hashem is coming about because it's a communication issue. Something's not being communicated right. The Wi-Fi is off. The Bluetooth's not working. There's a connection issue. And a person has to fix the connection issue and where the issue is actually at. And most of it is is that most people, I was sitting with a guy, told me today he's an atheist. He told me he's an atheist. I happen to hold that any person who calls himself an atheist, he's a Jewish, he's an oxymoron. He doesn't really exist. Hashem is very, very clear that all of, as the world has been trying to prove Hashem or disprove Hashem by science and biology and many things for many years, nobody ever thought, think about this, nobody ever thought to ask Hashem how it is that he said that he actually exists. A person reads all through, you can see it all throughout the Nevi'im. The Jewish people, as Hashem's business card to the rest of the world, that he exists. The whole entire world is going to know that Hashem is Hashem. He says it over and over again all throughout the Nevi'im. They talk about the Atid as when they see the Jewish people. When you see the Jewish people in the future, when you see them return home, when you see all these things come to pass. The Jewish people, Hashem is saying over again, then I'll be sanctified in the eyes of the nations. They don't know that I am Hashem. Over and over again. So a guy who says he's a Jewish atheist is an oxymoron, because as long as you're here, Hashem's here also. You're only proving Hashem by your very existence. You're proving Hashem. Other than that, we know what the history is. We don't stand the odds of even existence even. So this guy said he was a Jewish atheist, sweetheart of a yid, sweetheart. We had a conversation, and I listened to all the different things and why he felt it was very, very appropriate for him to, quote unquote, leave Yiddishkeit, leave Hashem, and whatever. And at the end of the day, I said, that Hashem has no qualms on you. Like you didn't leave Hashem. Like that nothing ever, it never occurred. He said to me, you don't think so? Like I didn't leave it? I said, no, you never left him. I said, I don't think you ever had him. Don't think you ever had such a relationship. Because when I'm listening to everything you had, yes, you had a relationship with Judaism. You had a relationship with Jewish things. There was some kesher with the Jewish stuff. You did things, right? I said, yes, you kept mitzvahs, everything. Yes, you were traditional. Kept with tradition. You did tradition. Right? You were traditional. That was orthodox. No. Traditional. You practiced the traditions of your father. You did the traditions. But having a relationship with Hashem, that's something completely different. And it's something that alters a person's life inside out. It changes everything about the individual. It changes the way that a person communicates with others. It changes the way that a person looks at life, the way that a person goes about. It changes everything from the moment that a person has a real relationship with Hashem. And the way to fix it is through communication. The more and more that a person speaks with Hashem, it becomes a reality to you that Hashem is actually there. And it begins with emes. So many people ask me, what do you say? I'll start with that. Hashem, what do I say? Whatever it is, anything you say over to someone else is easy, something you can say to Hashem. All the sefekot that a person has. You have doubts, talk to Hashem about it. The ikr is that if the desired goal is to bring yourself closer to Hashem, like we say in the Ashrei, Hashem is close to all who call upon him be'emet, in truth. Most people say Hashem's close to all who call upon him, they'll finish the pasuk. It says be'emet. Meaning that I'm speaking my words of truth to Hashem. Hashem, I'm mamish in the trenches. Hashem, I don't love you the way I should. I don't believe in you the way I should. Hashem, I have focus on you the way, this is where I'm holding. By a person engaging and talking to Hashem, the most simple avoda, a person will start to make cracks in the concealment, to start to make cracks in the kisuim, the coverings that's blocking the ore that Hashem is sending into the world at this time. The way that the person cracks it is through talking to Hashem, breaking yourself to talk to Hashem. That's it. A person doesn't do nothing. You know how many people I know that come to me who are on the verge of making tshuva? They're not Shomer Shabbos yet. If you're already Shomer Shabbos, it's not germane. The person, each person struggles different. One person struggles, he's got to tell his boss, man, I want to start taking Saturdays off. What do you think I should do? I should throw out all my goyish music. I should do that. First thing is a person builds a relationship with Hashem. I will tell you, as many times as I've been asked, I can't think of a single thing that I took on, especially at the beginning of my tshuva, that was hard. When I took on Shabbos, when I started taking on the Yamim Tovim, Kashrus, and other, I didn't feel a single. There was no struggle, no bit of struggle for me, B'klal, with any of it. Why? Because I already had a relationship with Hashem who told us to do the things. If you're told to do something, and you're required to do something by a stranger, how many of us will do it? I do it. We don't know over here. We don't know the government over here, whatever. You don't want to do what they say. You don't know these people, nor do we trust them. But the truth is, and any government, I'm saying, it's a distant figure. But if your mother tells you to do something, if your mother asks you a request of you to do something, take out the garbage, you make the fetch. I can fetch. But I'm not going to have any doubts, you understand, on whether or not the person who's communicating me to do such and such, whether or not they love me. Because the relationship is already there. Building the relationship between you and Hashem is going to always come back to how much you are communicating with Him. If you let Hashem in, Hashem will be there with you. If we don't let Hashem in, He's not there. Most people have these sorrows. Hashem hates me. Hashem hates me. Hashem doesn't. No, Hashem, I'm happy you're Mammon. You believe in Hashem. That's number one. But number two, it's not shalem, because if any person knows a little bit about Hashem, they know that Hashem is head over the heels in love with the individual. He used to say, in my lifetime, I've been to a lot of Goyish funerals. He used to say, it doesn't matter how big the guy was, a Rasha, he could have been the worst guy in the world. Every guy stood up who was given the hezbollah said, to know him was to love him. He could have ripped off everybody in the room. They always say, to know him was to love him. I started to think like this. I said, you know what? The emes is, they're saying something profound, wrong guy, but something profound, right? If a person knows Hashem, they'd be head over the heels in love with Him. Not my words. So Nassim of Breslov says that if a person even knew how much it was at Hashem, if he knew just a tiny bit, a tiny morsel of how much Hashem loved him, that person would drop the whole world and run after Hashem with everything that they had. If we were just privy to a little bit of how much Hashem loves us. So the way in is to build communication. So I brought a piece here from the Eitz of the Road. I want to open up for questions if anybody has any questions also after. Because I think it's very, very important for us to start making this a part of our lives. And I tell everybody, this is Judaism 101. It's talking to Hashem. Judaism 101 is talking to Hashem. I came to this long before later on I became a breast lover, so now I sound biased, but the truth is, as I opened up Tanakh, and I seen how everybody was getting close to Hashem, I seen how everybody was communicating with Hashem, and I started doing it. Praying to Hashem for hours at a time, some time to get there, but I was praying to Hashem for hours at a time. I was not Jewish, but I wanted to know the truth. I didn't know if Oto Ish was Mashiach, if he wasn't, or whatever, so what I did, start fasting, start crying out to Hashem. Why? Because it's in the book. That was it. Start finding, see what was inside the book. Very simple. We complicate a lot of things, guys. And I want to tell you, it's just not that complicated. It is just not that complicated. A person starts to live with Hashem, none of this feels restrictive, none of it feels... If a person starts to live with Hashem, you don't feel any of this. There was a I just told the story recently, Naaman. Naaman was a general in the army in the north of, I think it was Aram, I think at that time, which is modern day Lebanon and Lebanon, somewhere over to the maybe Syria area. And he was Hashem struck him with leprosy. He had a Jewish maid in his home. Yeah, we're not gonna talk about how that happened. Anyway, she told him and said, you should go and see. There's a Navi that you should go and see, maybe amongst the Jews, and maybe he can heal you. So the story gets out, which is the king of the north at that time, that there was a letter who came from the king of Aram, who came to him. I don't know if it was Achav or whoever the king was in the north at the time. And he said over to him, he says that I want, one of those good Jewish doctors, basically was asking for in the letter. And the king of the north at the time, he had no idea, who am I going to send, to heal him? So Elisha Navi finds out from his nevuah that there's a letter that came to him. So he sends to the king of the north and he says, send Naaman to me. They need to know there's a Navi in Israel. So Naaman comes, and he's got leprosy, but he comes with gifts and he loads himself up. And finally, when he gets to the house of Elisha, Elisha doesn't go out. He sends out his Gabbai. And the Gabbai goes and gives Naaman these instructions. He says, go and tovel 7 times inside the Yarden. Naaman's upset. He's like, I came all the way here for that. He says, I have better waters in Damascus. Why will I come and come get in your dirty Yarden River over here? I have the estates back here. So He starts to leave because he's very offended. And so one of his servants come over to him and he says, Naaman, do you mind if I ask you a question? He says, if this Navi would have told you to do something that was more difficult, would you not have done it? He said, yes. He said, so why not just go get in the water? Why not just go do it? So it's recorded over there. He goes, he gets in the water. He tells us, he comes out, his skin is like a baby skin, a new skin. And the reason why I highlight this, guys, is because everybody's always looking that everything's so difficult. I need a difficult avoda. And even when it happens, when a person wants to find Hashem, he thinks that only after he put in all this extra crazy effort or whatever, everybody wants to feel their growth. And everything can be accomplished through the most simple avoda of talking to Hashem. Of talking to Hashem. And Nachman says that all the sigufim, the rolling in the snow, all the fasting I was doing, I was eating food without swallowing it, trying to get no pleasure, everything that he did, he says, if I would have only known what level I could have got to from just talking to Hashem, he says, I wouldn't have did any of those other practices. I wouldn't have did any of it. If I would have known the level of secluding myself and talking with Hashem. So he says over here, he says, that every single time a person needs to make it a regular thing, levakesh me'Hashem yitbarach kol davar shenitzvach lo kegon parnasa banim, says refuah or Yeshua mimenu yisurim acharim v'chas v'shalom you shouldn't have. This is that everything. When a person wants to daven on parnasa, and the children, person needs to refer. Any type of Yeshua, person needs to make it a regular thing of talking to Hashem on every single thing that's going on in his life. Tzarich ledat, person needs to know. Says shika shaika eitza, that the ikka eitza who rak levakesh Yeshua mimeni yitbarach, that the main eitza for everything in life, the main eitza, the ikka eitza is requesting everything from Hashem. I saw one time by Rav Yitzhak Breiter, who was a Jim Breslov, he was a big tzaddik. He said that even when it comes to parnasa, and you guys are going to see this in your world, I had to experience this in my own life, everybody will give you opinions on what to do with your life that come from the book of second opinions, meaning it's not written anywhere else, right? It comes from the guy's own sheaf. It's the way he thinks, the way he sees the world, and anything like that. And he'll turn it into a thing. He'll even use Hashem's name and talk about, yeah, no, Hashem wants you to do this. Hashem wants you to do this. Everybody becomes a Navi when it's time for you to make parnasa. If you start to ask people when they start to give you eitzah, can you show me it in the sefer? Can you tell me who says this? Who brings it up? Who brings it? You'll find that not a lot of people have. So Rav Yitzhak Breiter says that a person, even with parnasa, doesn't make a single move until they've cried out to Hashem, and only when they were inspired from Hashem, they start to make a move. Not to run to tactics, not to run to look anywhere else first, but a person first starts with crying out to Hashem and only waiting till the person's inspired to go in a certain direction. So he says after that, I'll just finish his last piece, V'tzarik la'amim le'Hashem yitbarach, she'Hashem yitbarach, tov lakol. A person needs to know that Hashem is good for everything. For everything. Anything a person's lacking in his life, he can request these things of Hashem. And if a person's consistent in talking to Hashem, you'll see not only will it become easier to pray, but the potency of your prayers are going to take another level. And a person will be even able at that point. I seen also it's said, this is something that's brought down by the Ari. I seen by Rav Nassim Meir, actually I mentioned one time in the shiur I was at, actually. He brought that there was such an Indian, there was a tight sort of on the Ashrei that from the Ari, that Hashem, even for a person who makes it accustomed to cry out and to talk to Hashem regularly, he says that also that person, Hashem will start to do for the person even before he cries out. Before a person starts to talk to Hashem, he'll start to see Yeshuas. Because Hashem is already knowing the person is name on, he's dependable. This person depends on me, so a person is going to already receive from Hashem before they ever cry out to Hashem. But I want you guys to remember that tzarich la'amin, Hashem yitbarach, tov lakol. Hashem is tov, he's good for everything. Anything a person's struggling with. Shkoyach, so I'll take questions now. Thank you guys. You have a question over there? Rabbi.
How often do you speak to Hashem?
I try to speak to Hashem every single day, multiple times a day, throughout the day. Try to talk to Hashem at least. I try to spend at least an hour every day. What's
What's
an hour, 2 hours?
Like,
Huh?
an hour is a long time. Like, what's that look like? Like, is an hour just you speaking in a room?
Yeah, in a room or out in the fields. Baruch Hashem, and one of the reasons I moved to Beit Shemesh was because there's many places to talk to Hashem over here. Many places to talk to Hashem over here. Oh, over there. I'm sorry. Everywhere I'm at, I always say here. But also in Beit Meir, you have a place where there's many places over here you can go out and talk to Hashem. So I think what you're asking is like more of a technical thing of how do you spend so much time with Hashem. The first thing is this: you have to build it up. Every person has to know that a munah as a muscle, it has to be built, right? Same thing with bitachon. A person, one person trusts Hashem this much, another person trusts Hashem this much. Why? Because a person that has made it their business to start depending on Hashem for small things, they start to pack on how many things that they can depend on Hashem for. The same thing with speaking. If a person starts talking to Hashem and you're spending 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever, and you start adding on time, the more and more a person to start to realize, I know by the time I had a really close friend who was like a family friend, and I told him this verbatim what was going to happen. I said, you start talking to Hashem, you're going to start to see there's not enough time in the day for you to talk to Hashem. It's something that just happens when a person accustoms himself. So I had a friend who's worked himself up to an hour every day. He was talking to Hashem for an hour. And he came to me and says, you're right. He says, an hour is not enough. It's not enough time for me to say all the things I need to say to Hashem. All right, it's something you build up. Speaking, I do podcasting also apart from this. All right, so the question was, I could come and talk to you guys until tomorrow. I'm not going to do that. I know you guys have things to do. I can come and talk to you guys until tomorrow. The moment you got to talk in front of a camera and you put a camera, it's like, what do I say? It's a different type of pressure. It's a different type of thing. But repetition, you get used to it, and you get more used to it. You're more used to it. I don't mean to bring the conversation with Hashem down to something like this, but in a way to simplify it for everybody, the more and more you talk to Hashem, the more and more it's going to get easier and easier, and you will realize, I guarantee you without a doubt, that there's not enough hours in the day for you to really cry out to Hashem on all the things that you want. Because even if at a time when you're not speaking, just the mere kisufim, the yearning for whatever it is that you're requesting from Hashem will be lingering and pulling and tugging at your heart, with the words to talk about anything else you don't have. You just want to be in this place of at least wanting that Hashem is going to either bring about a Yeshua, or the wanting is for Hashem himself. The sipuk of when the neshama has a certain kesher with Hashem has overcome its trials, of whatever it is, or with Moshe Nefesh in whatever place a person was, to be able to accomplish relationship with Hashem. You can have this yearning all day long. It will last all day long. So for me personally, I try to spend at least an hour every day with Hashem.
I think one of the biggest struggles of that, I think, for most of us is it's kind of hard to conceptualize that. Like seeing something that's not physically there.
Mm-hmm. So that's like I said, everything becomes a conversation a person can have with Hashem. And the more you do it, the more honest you become. But really starting, like I said, with the words of truth, of the words that, like you just said, is in the words, Hashem, it's very, very hard for me to understand how it is that I'm supposed to talk to you. Okay, even 2 minutes, Hashem, even 3 minutes with you, Hashem, like, Hashem, it's hard. Hashem, I've said a few words to you before. You don't seem to say anything back. Life is troubling for me, and I'm going through a lot of things. Right? You can start very, very simple before you get into crazy words and using big words or anything like that. It's very, very simple words to Hashem. Hashem, right now I'm struggling. I need you. I don't see a way out of my situation. My back's against the wall. And Hashem, it could be that I made a bunch of mistakes that put me in this situation. Hashem, but you said I could depend on you, so I'm coming to you now. So I'm talking to you now about the situation. So Hashem, help me out. I'm depending on you. What is it that I can do to fix it? Hashem, I don't know you. I want to have a better relationship with you. Please, Hashem, help me out. Simple words. I'm not saying anything spectacular, right? But the simplicity that a person approaches a relationship with Hashem is what eventually opens you up to the next phase of wherever a person will be. And then you could start talking like me. I say some wild things to Hashem, guys. I ain't gonna lie. I've been doing it for a long time. I say some crazy stuff to Hashem. I didn't realize it until I was saying it over to someone else, some of the things I told Hashem. But one of the things I tell Hashem all the time is this Indian of Kenyan is, Hashem, listen, right now you're mine. I'm not sharing you with anybody else. I'm not interested in sharing you with anybody else. And I tell Hashem all the time, I want to be your favorite guy. I tell you all the time. I'm not taking away from everybody else. Hashem, I just want to make sure that I'm your favorite guy. I told Hashem, I remember telling Hashem one time, I said, Hashem, you know what? The truth is this. I am where I am. Hashem, I know where I want to be. And the fact that I haven't reached that potential yet, Hashem, I said, I said, Abba, it's hurting you more than it's hurting me. So let's do us both a favor, So Hashem, help me out over here, bring me closer. Help me to break all these bilbulim and everything that I'm going through right now, Hashem. Because listen, it's got to be hurting you way more than it's hurting me, And it hurts me. So can I imagine, Hashem, if you love me this much, you have fun with your father and ever. But you can talk to Hashem very simply, guys. It's not something that's out of reach for us. I was just at Rashid a couple of weeks ago, and a boy asked me this question on Torah. He said, listen, he says, if I start talking about he's voted this to my Rosh Yeshiva and all this other stuff like that, they're going to tell me it's Bittul Torah, so how do I rectify this, that I see that I'm actually coming closer to Hashem, but it's like time is Bittul Torah. I said, there's a couple things you should know. First off, Rav Nachman of Breslov was very, very nice. He said that his desire was that his Talmidim, his students, would spend an hour every day, just 1 hour. He says, really, you need a whole day. He said, but we can limit it down to an hour, right? And in an hour, you should be able to accomplish everything. He says, this is at the least the minimum. This is what I want from my Talmidim. I said, so you should tell your Rebbe, because I'm sure he probably learns, he probably reads the Mishnah Berurah and everything. He should look inside the Mishnah Berurah and see that the Chofetz Chaim was much worse than Rabbi Nachman. He says a person should take a whole day out of a week and he should go seclude himself with the Hashem and beg him to bring it closer. He says, leave the Beis Midrash and to go and to cry out to Hashem. He said, he's requiring a whole day of your time. What's easier, an hour a day or to take off a whole entire day and sit in seclusion with Hashem? I said, so first off, you should tell him this. I said, number two, I said, there's two type of tefillas that Reb Nassim of Breslov talks about when he's speaking about this relationship of us talking to Hashem in our own words. He says there's one type of tefillah that's lower than Limud Torah, meaning that if I'm praying to Hashem on my physical needs, very important, make it a part of your life. Your physical needs, things that you need, financial needs, things of that nature. He says those things are lower than Torah. So in other words, I got 5 minutes in there. So I can steig over a Gemara. I can do whatever the case is, and then I'll save some other time to set aside that time to dive into Hashem on my needs, as long as something's not pressing. I'm not in a state of emergency. However, he says there is a tefillah that's higher than Limud Torah. The tefillah that's higher than Limud Torah is the tefillahs that a person engages into Hashem to be Makayim the Torah. So if a person's talking to Hashem to be an Ish Emes, Hashem, help me to have Midot Tovot. Hashem, I realize that, listen, I'm rubbing guys the wrong way here in the Yeshiva. And Hashem, after a while, so-and-so doesn't like my jokes. Hashem, I'm full of lashon hara. Sorry, Hashem, it's funny to me. I need to work on myself. Whatever the case is, a person's working on his midos, shmir seinayim, different things like that. A person wants to be stronger in Shabbos. Person's davening to be mekayim the Torah, to have midos, to be a ish emes, right? Person davening on that, he says this is all higher than the Torah. So it's not bittul Torah. These are things that are higher. Person, if without this you have no fertile ground for the Torah to even be inside the person. It's nothing. It's gonna produce weeds. So in order for you to actually build, some person has to daven up here on these things. That's not bittul Torah. And I said, you want to improve it? I said, what do you do when you walk to a guy? If you're talking with a friend of you and you're going back and forth, you're talking with this guy, right? Think about it. And you're talking in Torah. Would you say you're wasting your time? I said, no. I said, so you're talking in Torah with the Shem. It's higher than Torah learning itself. It's brought also to the Rashi says the tefillah stands at the height of the world, is disrespected the most. It's much easier, guys, to be a masmid and to be a talmid chacham And to be the person, why? Because there's so much kavod still wrapped in all of this. It's so much easier to feel great about yourself once you're the guy in the shir, you're answering all the questions and all this other stuff and whatever. And you can play humble. Yeah, just me, you know what I'm saying, whatever the case. But then he feels very good about himself. But Hashem is a lot of kavod or whatever. Much harder to be the guy telling Hashem, I can't, Hashem, I'm such a ball guy, but Hashem, I'm so, much easier to be the guy that learns all the time, right? But what's going to bring him higher is that emes that he's engaging in every single day of telling Hashem, Hashem, I'm very far from the mark. The cheshbon that he's having with Hashem, that's what's going to bring him up. So the person is working on himself.
I heard the story in the past that you've been through about it. And what if a person's been through stuff and he just doesn't like Hashem so much? So it's hard for him to speak with, you did all this stuff to me. I'm not going to speak to you as if everything's cool.
Yeah. So the emphasis is that it's rearranging the way that a person looks at the things that happen to them in their life. And some people have this natural thing. And I'll be very honest about that, is that it wasn't natural for me to grow angry with Hashem. The time I grew angry with Hashem is when I decided to, change religions at the time, when I was looking at Yiddishkeit and I'm looking at Torah in the face compared to what I had understood before. I felt a little duped by Hashem. I wasn't angry where I wasn't going to serve him as Hashem, but how could I not know? My wife is much more angry than me. But in terms of all the things that I went through in my life, it softened my heart towards Hashem as opposed to making me reject Hashem more. The problem that you guys may have that I didn't have is that Hashem was the answer to my problems. I wasn't always told that Hashem was the cause of my problems. And the reason why in your world, I would say, coming from where you guys may come from, by and large, Hashem becomes the cause of your problems because he's the default guy in your world. In my world, nobody was talking about Hashem like that. Yeah, it wasn't part of my world. So obviously, who's going to save me from my troubles is the Hashem that's been this outside distant thing. But a lot of things today, in the frum world, we use Hashem, we say things like Baruch Hashem, Imtz Hashem, and all that, and it's empty words. A person doesn't feel nothing, not saying anything when at the time he's saying, it's just a part of our lashon or whatever. So at that point, and we know that Hashem is the pinnacle, we have Yom Kippur, we have, those times where we do actually, as a klal, engage Hashem. It's not all the time, right? So Hashem then becomes, well, if Hashem is all this and other things, he must be the reason that's doing all these things to me, right? And the emes is, I'll tell you what Rav Nachman says, sometimes people are worse than the Yetzer Hara himself, The emes is that your issues are not with Hashem. The issues are that we are battling, the biggest issue that we're having right now is that we don't have Hashem. It's a chisaron of Hashem. I found out something right now, a medical thing, I'm just telling you right now, whether it's true or not, many people can argue whatever they want. So for many years, people have said that acid reflux is caused by the mere fact that you have too much acid buildup. So you need some type of medicine that's alkaline that's going to reduce the acid. I'm sorry if I'm totally taking you guys into Harvard University at this point, but I want you to understand this. So the medical understanding was that if you have too much acid in the gut, right? You're familiar with this, then you need to take something that is going to diffuse the acid, right? So now, in recent years, they've shown that there are many studies that say it's not the problem of having too much acid, that it's not enough acid. So a person needs to take more acid, apple cider vinegar, and other things like this. Now, I've tried this and have seen that adding acid to my acid reflux has actually reduced the acid that was in it. But for many years, I'm being told that, okay, it's because you're alkaline. You don't have enough, you have too much, it's an overload of acid that you have. And so therefore, this is what's causing it, right? So I want to bring that into what we're dealing with. So for many years, you've been told that Hashem did this, Hashem does this, Hashem did that, Hashem did this, Hashem did all this other stuff. And because you have too much Hashem in your life, you got problems. You understand what I'm saying? So Hashem, why are you doing all this to me? And the truth is, what's causing the issues is a chisaron of Hashem. It's a lack of Hashem that's caused all the issues and our problems. Because you have to be willing to say, on my second part of talking to this atheist guy, I told him, I said, listen, I would accept your understanding of everything, the way that you look at the world today, if you can sit here and tell me that you gave Hashem everything you got. If you gave the relationship, I'm saying, when two people divorce from a relationship, somebody feels bad. Usually it's the guy. We're usually the jerks, we'll be honest. Most of the time I've talked to couples and there was a divorce, guy feels like an idiot afterwards because he knows he was stubborn, he was an idiot, he was a jerk, he didn't treat her right, he did all this other stuff, right? It's usually the guy. That's why 80% of divorces are usually pushed by women. You guys, none of us should know from this. But the truth is that usually somebody feels bad. Then a person has to reflect and ask themselves, did I do every single thing that I could to make it work? And when I asked this guy, he says, I can't say that I did. So that means for you, for each and every one of us, you have to ask yourself, did I give it everything I had? So is it really a result of why I'm feeling what I'm feeling because it's too much Hashem, or Hashem's just messing up everything, or Hashem just is trying to destroy me, or whatever the case is? How much time you spend with Hashem? How much time did you make it a point to make Hashem the most important thing in your life, that your whole life will be dictated and revolved around Hashem, right? So if he's all powerful and he's all big and that, so much so that he's messing up your life, how much do we do the opposite? Of really looking at that and saying that the Hashem should have this centerpiece in my life and everything in my life should be revolving around it. So I think it's a chisaron of Hashem that causes the issues, not too much.
And what in your life triggered your change in whatever your path was when you were younger?
There were many triggers, but at least in terms of the biggest one of the I can't say that there was a thing, because even when I was a kid, maybe because there was so much going on at my house, I needed some type of escape. And I grew up in my family was very exposed to a lot growing up as a kid, a lot of drug use, abuse, and different things like that. So it became a very natural thing. And I would say one other disclaimer I have to say also, and this probably goes to answer one of your questions. And this is gonna sound, the truth is that it is funny, but it's actually the truth, right? I'm black, so I never had these many struggles with believing Hashem, not believing. It just comes along with the package, comes with the melanation, I grew up believing in God. We don't get too big, nothing's too smart, maybe because the education's not so great in our neighborhoods. I don't know what it is. It's just certain questions we just don't end up having, and start having. So at least my experience was in the hood that when people got drunk enough or sedated enough or high enough, they started talking about God, So I want to know about God. It happened. So I don't know if it was that in particular, but I had this thirst from a very, very young age, always feeling like I was a part of something bigger than myself and not really connected to whatever it was. So I had that. So my natural thing was, by the time I was running with street gangs and getting in trouble and doing all the other things like that, I had my experience of Christianity, and shortly after that, kind of waning and doing my own thing and falling sort of some back into that lifestyle, I felt an internal clock ticking, that I knew that at some point either I was going to give my whole entire life over to God in terms of the way that I saw things. I felt this pressure. I was talking to Hashem at 16 years old. I was locking myself in my room. Huh? By that time, I wasn't involved in the gangs. In the gangs, that was till I was 14 years old.
What age did you start?
Huh?
What age did you start?
I start what?
In the street gang?
The street gang? 9, 8, whatever. I smoked pot the first time I was 9.
What does that mean? What does it mean that my daughter's 9?
Uh-huh.
I can't imagine her being in the street gang.
You can.
What does that
She
mean?
probably not smoking weed either.
I can't say never.
I could just say,
Yeah.
when you grow up in an environment like that, and this is what you see, you naturally become a product of your environment, right? I had no problem. I would tell you this. If I would have went to my high school, I remember if I would have went to my high school and I would have asked everybody on the basketball team, what's your plans for the future? I'm sure I would have got at least 98.9% of the guys would have told me they're going to the NBA. I mean, and what's the odds of that? It's not likely, right? So it wasn't realistic, but that's in that world. It's either that or, they don't think past that as much where we came from. Now, when I started speaking at Jewish schools, and I remember the first time I went to school, and I was sitting in the room with the basketball team of the Jewish school, and And my Rebbe was actually talking to them and asked them, what's the plans for the future? Where do you see yourself as an adult, career-wise? What are you going to do? Nobody in the room said they were going to the NBA. Not one. One said to be an accountant, like his father. One's going to be a lawyer, or the doctor, whatever the father was. That's what they said they were going to be. All right? Most biased the Chavis, they weren't around their fathers, so they didn't know who the father was, so they're going to the NBA. It just is what it is. It's unfortunate. It's a sad thing. It's a horrible thing, but it's the truth. It's the reality of what was going on. So you become a product of your environment, right? We're always, there's some hustle all the time. There's some yidna doing whether it's buildings, whether it's Amazon, whether it's some real estate for sure. But it's also because you're a product of your environment. So once I saw all those things going on in my life where people were in the streets and gangs, like that's what we looked at. That was what was cool for us, right? That's what we wanted to be when you go. You want to be a gangster. I watched Boys in the Hood, Minister Society and all that, and I didn't look at how bad it was. It's just like, man, the glorification of such a lifestyle, you want to be a part of it. So you join on those. So I was young. We started our first gang, we were like 8 or 9 or something like that. And it really started gangbanging until I was about 12 years old. I was running with the wrong crowd. And from that, Baruch Hashem, but even by the time I was 16, by the time I was 16, 17 already, I already had a major life change by going to a Christian organization camp, and I was praying to Hashem a lot during that time. And so by the time I hit adulthood, 18, when I'm looking at life again, and I was offered a big contract from a major record label at that time that was underneath the Universal umbrella, I started to make gangster music because that's what was there. I didn't know I was going to start changing. I started to change. I got into a rap beef. It was either my life or the other guy's life. And I turned to praying.
What's a rap beef?
A rap beef? Don't tell me. Tell this
Yoni,
guy.
that's what me and you had.
Like Drake,
Drake and Kendrick.
Drake and Kendrick. I guess that's your, whatever the case is. Tupac and Biggie. It's essentially two guys, speaking Lashon Hara amongst each other, back and forth. It's just, I know that. Put the subtitles.
Who won rap?
Guys, I'm a changed man. I'm a changed man. The truth is that one didn't end so well. Like a friend of mine tried to kill him afterwards. And after, it wasn't because of rap beef. We just decided, we weren't going to make a song back. We'll just take it to the streets. And that's what we did. And after physical altercation, a friend tried to kill him. And after that, they thought I sent somebody to kill them. After, they obviously survived. They didn't get shot, but they were shot at. So they were either going to take my life or it was on me to take their life. So, no, because nobody was going to call the cops, right? So after that, I started praying. I prayed a lot. I prayed a lot. We put it behind us. And after that, I started running Team Hashem from that moment on. That was 2008. So 2007 is when it took place, and then by 2008, as I was on this journey, I just told somebody I have a record. Hashem should continue to help me. That I haven't said a single swear word since 2008. I haven't said a single, not even bumping my toe, nothing or anything like that. But the reason why I'm just using something small like that to say that nibble pay. Well, nibble pay. Yeah, we don't talk like that. We don't speak like that. These things, they I don't want to go into a whole thing on swear words, but at least we all know that we all desire, the Mesilat Yesharim says that a person needs to make for himself a tselem of himself. You make an image, a desired image of who a person wants to be. And every day in the Cheshbon and Nefesh, you measure yourself to that tselem that you made for yourself to see how far off you are. And I'm sure that any person that is really looking to be close to Hashem, curse words, doing drugs, all the other things like that, is not a part of the perfect image of who they are, right? So, in a simple way. But I'm saying that to say that an encounter with Hashem that I had there already by 2007 caused me that all the way to 2025 that I wouldn't fix my words to say certain things. You understand? My mouth to say certain things. That mean I don't have what to work on. I'm just saying that something like that was something that was eradicated immediately. It went with the package, right, of who the old person was. So, saying that to say that being with Hashem is life altering. It changes the way a person looks at the world, changes the way a person interacts with the world. But it starts with communication. Guys, I got a bar mitzvah I got to go to. Thank you guys so much. You have to also go.